So every time I go up New South Wales, they call me a Mexican. So welcome, gringo.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. It was certainly not me that ever called anyone that, but I love my Victorian friends. We get along really well.
Yeah, no, well, I like to have a bit of banter, and if they want to give me a hard time north side of the river, I don't blame them. So.
Right.
So you come down today. You've had a look at Lake Eildon, but let's get into why are you down here? Why are you talking to me? What are you doing? What's this all about? What's this Riverina State?
Well, the first thing, Tim, that I'd like to say, and for yourself and for the viewers, is that my name is David Landini, and just a little bit of personal information about me, because I think that's important for people to know who they're dealing with.
Yep.
So I will just give some personal information. As I said, my name's David Landini. I'm married. My wife and I have 6 children. They are adults and they've all actually left home. I'm self-employed. I deal with farmers. I deal in wool, and I'm very aware of what happens on farm and what happens in the wider area affects my job, and it affects not only my job and my prosperity, but it affects the jobs of all the people in all these areas and the prosperity of all the people in these areas. We're very intertwined. So I think being self-employed and profiting from the good things about business, but also being punished for mistakes that are made, or punished for mistakes that governments make. That's a real thing. So it's very important. I'm very aware of the need for a wealthy and a prosperous society.
Yes. Yep. Yes, I agree. I'm actually one of 7, so my family mightn't be too different to yours. And my parents have adult children now too, so
yep.
A little bit in common there. But yeah, I think so. On prosperity, it's a very important conversation in the political space. But there seems to be a side of the political world that really, I don't know, they seem to want the opposite of prosperity. But I think most people out in the country, they know if you want prosperity, you got to work hard and you got to build things, right? It's pretty simple.
That is right.
Really.
Yeah, you got to create things. You have to build things. Now, whether it's a lot of the wealth in the country areas is produced naturally, as in livestock. As I said before, I deal in wool. Farmers, for example, the people in these areas produce wool. Now, we might think that that's not a manufacturing type of job, as in it doesn't build cars or it doesn't build a house, but it is the creation of wool, which is it's the foundation material for a lot of the clothes that we wear. Yeah. And then there's wool, there's cotton, there's all sorts of livestock production. So what we do in these areas, we have a lot of manufacturing, but it's the manufacturing of primary type industry products. Yes. Very, very important. And that wealth that we create, that enables us to be prosperous. Yeah. So it's very important. But the problem we have, Tim, is that in New South Wales, and I'll just jump ahead a little bit, I hope this is all right.
Yeah,
but in New South Wales and Victoria, they're both very, very similar states in that those states are dominated politically by the populations of the urban areas. In Victoria, it's Geelong, Melbourne and the Mornington Peninsula, and in New South Wales, it's Newcastle, Sydney and Wollongong. Yeah. Because over 3/4 of the population of Victoria is in Geelong, Melbourne and the Mornington Peninsula. And as a consequence of that, over 3/4 of the politicians in Victoria are from Geelong, Melbourne and the Mornington Peninsula. Now, and I'll just give the exact numbers now, like in the Victorian State Parliament, in the Legislative Assembly, the lower house, there's 88 members of Parliament. Now, of that 88 members of Parliament, 68 of those are in Geelong, Melbourne and the Mornington Peninsula. Yep. And there's only 20 members of Parliament outside of that area. And if that doesn't sound bad enough, it's actually worse than that, because there's one electorate Ballarat and 2 in Bendigo that really are extensions of the urban area.
Yes.
So it's very bad in that these states are dominated by the urban, as I said, dominated by the urban population. Now, there are some very, very significant differences between the urban population and the non-urban population. Our livelihoods are based on natural resource management and production that comes from that management. Whereas the economies in Geelong, Melbourne and the Mornington Peninsula, they're much more second and third level manufacturing, also a lot more service type things, as in hospitals and education and so forth, and a lot more government employment in those urban areas. Now, the problem that we have is that they make rules and legislation that are actually extremely detrimental for us. And just for example, the most obvious one from the area I'm from, that's an irrigation area of southern New South Wales. But I will say right now, irrigation is an extremely important and productive industry in Victoria and New South Wales. And of course, the most obvious problem is the Murray-Darling Basin Authority, the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, which is a water management plan administered in conjunction with the federal government and the state governments of Victoria and New South Wales. Now, the urban population basically make those decisions about how that works. Now, what they've decided and concluded is that we have to so-called save the environment, but that involves taking a lot of water out of irrigation and out of the creation of wealth in the country areas. And what we've found, Tim, is that over the last number of years, I and you and a lot of other people have been to a lot of protests, for example, and write to members of parliament and make a lot of representations to the parliaments and so forth. But the bottom line is it makes no difference.
Yep.
So
just real quick, why does it make no difference?
It makes no difference because the states are insurmountably politically dominated by those urban populations. Now, within that urban population, there's a very large subpopulation that is actually philosophically opposed to the industries that our livelihoods depend on. For example, the so-called environmental concerns that a lot of urban people have, they are not accurate concerns. They have been debunked, for example, but it doesn't make any difference because they're philosophically opposed to those industries. And for example, the timber industry. That's a very important industry. It creates a lot of wealth, creates a lot of jobs and keeps a lot of people in these areas. But because there's a very significant urban population that doesn't think that trees should be cut down, well, those industries are being suppressed.
Yeah.
Now that takes away our wealth creation, takes away our jobs, and ultimately takes away our people.
Yeah.
So
I believe there's whole towns out Gippsland Way, for instance, that are basically looking at just being ghost towns. You know, it's destroyed them. So, sorry, go on.
We've had like some of these forests there. The timber industry is it's a really good example. Now that industry has been in existence for a long, long time. And in some examples over 150 years. And these forests, for example state forests, have been logged for over 150 years. Now it's a very selective logging, they don't just go through and clear fell at all. So they select certain particular trees, only so many trees in such an area, and then they allow for plenty of regrowth. So it's a self-sustaining industry. But that doesn't matter because there's that significant population in the city area that is philosophically opposed to the timber industry insists that industry be shut down. So in Gippsland, for example, the suppression of the timber industry in Gippsland is a disaster. Those forests have been logged for well over 100 years. There's still lots of trees there, ample trees because of the selective harvesting that they do. But those industries are shut down. And those people lose their jobs. And then those towns basically wither and decline because the wealth creation's not there, the jobs aren't, and the people aren't there. But it's not because of the people in the countryside, it's because of the people in the urban population.
Yes. Yeah, and look, I mean, it's going to be hard to do a short interview because we could talk about just that one industry for hours.
Yep.
But there's so much more to it because they've taken away the firefighting and all these sorts of, it's a huge conversation, it's a big problem. But I think the point is this stuff's coming out of, in this case for Gippsland's coming out of Melbourne, but really, it comes from Sydney as well. They make national parks. I think you've spoken about that before. So these city, urban areas are making these decisions. We all suffer. They kill our communities. That's the point. We need to do something.
They absolutely do, Tim.
Yeah. So you're proposing a new state, and this is an idea which I'm very familiar with, but I'll ask questions as if though I'm not, hopefully. I find it very exciting, but I think you've explained why we need a new state. That's been done. Can it even be done?
It certainly can be done, Tim. And I will just go back a step there. I over time, and just observing what's not worked, and basically nothing has worked as far as protests and presentations go, and I think it's pretty obvious that we're on a losing streak, and we cannot break that losing streak while we're attached politically to that insurmountable political domination in Geelong, Melbourne and the Mornington Peninsula and Newcastle, Sydney and Wollongong. Now, if we want to keep the industries that our livelihoods depend on and keep our prosperity up and in existence and keep ourselves in these towns and our towns prosperous, regrettably or unfortunately, we can't do it while we are attached politically to the urban population of Victoria and the urban population of New South Wales. So I am proposing that we actually form a new state, and this is not actually a new idea, to be quite frank. And for example, I live in southern New South Wales and in an area called the Riverina. Now, it was first proposed that the Riverina separate from New South Wales back in 1860, when they were colonies, of course. Unfortunately, at the time, that didn't occur. But a lot of people may not be aware of Australian history, Tim, in that all of Australia, I think we all know that all of Australia was New South Wales.
Yeah, and New Zealand, I believe.
And New Zealand was part of New South Wales, right to the West Australian border. And Victoria actually separated from New South Wales in 1851. So there is a history of Australia being separated into smaller administrative areas. Of course, they were colonies back then, and Australia, of course, was federated in 1901. Those colonies being New South Wales, the original section of New South Wales, Victoria in 1851, Queensland separated from New South Wales in 1859, and I'll go back a step, I'm a little bit out of order, but Tasmania separated from New South Wales in 1825, and South Australia separated from New South Wales in 1846. So they were all originally in New South Wales, separated into separate colonies, and then in Australia, in 1901, those colonies re-federated back into the Commonwealth of Australia. So there's a history of separation into smaller administrative areas. And the reason that was done originally, Tim, is because it was better for the people in those areas to govern themselves in those smaller areas. Because the people in Victoria, leading up to the 1850s, they knew that they could govern themselves better and live much more prosperous lives, not being governed by the Home Office in Sydney. And so they separated then. And
so that makes perfect sense, really, when you think about it. The closer to home your government is, and the more they understand your lifestyle, the more they're going to be able to govern for you.
That's right. And when Australia was federated in 1901, when the founders of the Australia constructed the Australian Constitution, they assumed that new states would be formed in this new country, this Commonwealth. And when the Constitution was put together, they provided for the creation of new states.
So that is in the Constitution.
It's been provided for in the Australian Constitution, and I can actually quote the relevant section. Section 120 of the Australian Constitution gives the federal government the authority to admit new states. Section 121 and Section 122 go into some smaller detail which I won't go into, but Section 124 is a very, very relevant section to do with states, and it describes the process of forming another state, and the only requirement to form another state is to obtain the consent of the Parliament of the affected state. So to form a Riverina State, which I'm promoting, so that's the name that I'm promoting, but for the New South Wales section requires the consent of the Parliament of New South Wales. That's all that's required to form that state. And the federal government, of course, has the authority to admit that new state into the Commonwealth. And the proposed Riverina State includes what's historically the Riverina area of New South Wales, but also some large areas of Victoria. And all that's required to include the areas of Victoria is the consent of the Parliament of Victoria.
So that would be the hard part then, would be getting the consent. The Constitution's quite basic, that's very simple, very clear. Getting the consent's going to be the work, I suppose. It is,
Tim, but it's very, very simple. It's certainly not complicated. Now, as far as gaining the consent of the Parliament of New South Wales for the New South Wales section and the Parliament of Victoria for the Victorian section, now the Riverina State group, of which I'm the president, and I will say now we have 1,670 members of that group. We are in the process of registering a political party called the Riverina State Party, and we will stand candidates in the next federal election under the party name the Riverina State, and hopefully in the next New South Wales and Victorian state elections we will also stand candidates under the name the Riverina State. Now, the reason for that is it's part of the process to lead to state formation. The first thing that a registered party will do will put the issue into the public domain in a way that really cannot be done any other way. The great benefit of having a party named the Riverina State is the advertising value to begin with. Now, the reason the advertising value is so good is that the party name will be printed on the voting ballots in the elections that we stand candidates, and so we're talking about 900,000 voting ballots. So to get the Riverina State name printed on up to 900,000 voting ballots, that's actually massive. So there's a huge advertising value as far as getting the issue out there. There is media attention on this because it's a big story, which helps get the message out there further again. And during elections, when people go to vote, they'll get their voting card, and you'll have the Liberal Party, the Labor Party, the National Party and the Greens and the Riverina State written on that voting ballot, and it will give people the opportunity to express their support for state formation with their vote. So I hope that we get a lot of primary votes. If we get 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 or 50,000 or 100,000 votes, it's a massive statement from the public in those areas, and we will get those votes, I will say right now. It will be a massive statement of public support for state formation. So,
I was just going to ask, so what does that achieve? Like having that support, but realistically, you're going to have a very hard time actually getting candidates or yourself in. So what does that actually show?
I think, Tim, I think a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that elections are either you get elected or you failed, but that's not the case. There's we will use elections to, number one, to advertise the issue. Number one, to advertise the issue. Number two, to get people to express support, public support for the issue with their vote. Now, if we get someone elected, that's really, really good. But even if we don't get anyone elected, the fact that we get 5, 10, 15, 50,000 or 100,000 votes, as I said before, it's a huge expression of public support for state formation. And we will use that public expression for state formation to demand a referendum on state formation.
Ah, yes, okay.
Now, a referendum will be a vote of the people in that proposed state on whether those people want to form that state. It will not include the population of Melbourne or Sydney, only the people in that proposed state. And I'm actually very confident that we will win that referendum, and that successful referendum will be used to cause or persuade or cause the Parliament of Victoria to consent to the formation to part of Victoria, leaving the state of Victoria to become part of that Riverina State, and also to cause the consent of the Parliament of New South Wales to consent to the formation of that state, and part of New South Wales separating from New South Wales.
Okay, so you're not necessarily, you don't have to get in it, or you don't have to get any of your candidates in. You're just showing the support, and I guess from showing support too, I mean, you know, other parties would probably jump on board if there's a lot of support. But
if we get someone elected, that would be ideal.
Yeah.
But even if we get no candidates elected, we will still use the public expression of support to justify a referendum on state formation.
Yeah.
The other thing, Tim, that it will do, I'm very sure. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm critical of other politicians or candidates for election.
I don't mind critical of others.
But I'm really quite confident that the public expression of support will be seen by other candidates for election, and assuming that we get anywhere between 5 to 100,000 votes, I'm confident that a lot of other politicians and candidates for election will see that this is a popular issue, and they will be more inclined to express public support for state formation as well.
Yeah.
I'm very, very confident that that will happen, that a lot of politicians that maybe will just see how the wind's blowing on this issue, we will see how the wind blows on this issue, and it's a good wind, and we will find increased not only public support for state formation, but increased political support for state formation.
Yeah.
And that's one of the other benefits of standing candidates under the name the Riverina State in federal elections and New South Wales state elections and Victorian state elections.
Yeah, no, I love it, and certainly if I get a ballot paper and I'm seeing that name Riverina State on there, that's getting the number one. Yeah, because I might even prefer another party for different political reasons, but at the end of the day, living in a rural area, there is only one answer I'm aware of to the political problems we're getting, and that is forming a new state, what I call the Brexit movement, the Riverina State movement. That's it, that's the answer.
Tim, it's the only answer.
Yeah.
History has shown that it doesn't matter. Like, for example, I haven't just arrived here today at Tim's place to talk about state formation. There's a long history that's led up to this point, and a big part of that history is that nothing works.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what presentations we make to politicians or parliaments. It doesn't matter what protests we make or attend, or how big or how popular these protests are.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing makes any difference. And the problem with that is we will lose our jobs, we'll lose our livelihoods, our towns will go into decline. That is what's happening now, and that will continue. This is the only thing that can actually resolve our problems, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. And I mean, you'll be well aware that in Victoria, I mean, property rights have been absolutely squashed for rural people, particularly out west at the moment. They've got a huge battle on their hands, just trying to stop, people wanting to build towers all over their land. So if you want to put an end to that, there really is only one answer that's actually going to solve that problem. And you're the one proposing it, so...
Well, on that particular issue, what I'd like to say, Tim, as far as solar farms and windmills, wind turbines and so forth, if the Victorian government wants to build them, I'm quite happy for them to build them off St Kilda Beach or some other location like that.
They can have it.
Go for their lives. But not in our backyard, because they put their, to be quite frank, they're putting their junk in our yard, and for the electricity to go back into Melbourne.
Yep.
Well, we don't do that. A Riverina State will not do that. That will be one of the things that will be very, very quickly ended, because if it's a decision to be made by the people in that area, in that Riverina State, that is one project that will be just turfed out immediately.
Look, I'll admit this straight up, I'm a bit of a silly person sometimes and it's a silly thought, but I like the idea of collecting all those solar panels and piling them up just outside the boundaries of Melbourne, saying you can have it back. So,
Yeah, that's, yep.
But, you know, it's the point is, you know, our property rights and things like that, there is one solution to that.
Yeah.
And that is this Riverina State.
Yeah, our property rights will be defended and protected and ensured that they're empowered by the people in that state.
Yeah.
We will make the decisions about what happens within the area of that state, and we certainly won't be dominated by the urban population of Geelong, Melbourne and the Mornington Peninsula. And I don't refer to that urban population in any way of animosity.
Some of them are great.
Look, there's a lot of we've all got friends in that urban population, so we will still all remain friends. There's not an issue there, and we'll still go to the football and vice versa, and all those good things.
Probably still drink their beer.
And and all that sort of stuff. But they won't make decisions on what happens in our neck of the woods.
Yeah.
So they can be happy, and we'll be happy.
Look, I do get a bit of animosity towards those areas, but at the political level, not at the individuals that live there.
Yeah.
Now, so why the name Riverina? So it makes sense, certainly up your way, the name Riverina, but down my way, it's a little bit different. So, yeah, why the name the Riverina State? What's this mean to you?
Well, the Riverina, of course, is historically southern New South Wales.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fairly definite area. Now, the name, and I'll just a little bit of history on that. The name, the Riverina, was first devised apparently back in the 1860s. It's been around a long time.
Yeah.
And the word Riverina is based on the word river, of course. Because through those areas of southern New South Wales, it's quite arid, but there's all these rivers and creeks and all sorts of things that go through that area. So the base word is river, and then it evolved or developed into Riverina. So that's where the word Riverina comes from, and as I said, historically it's southern New South Wales. But as a geographical description, the Riverina doesn't stop at the Murray River.
Yeah.
The Riverina, that Riverina area extends all through the whole catchment of the Murray-Darling Basin.
Yeah.
So even Victoria, which historically has not been regarded or referred to as the Riverina, it is the same country.
Yeah.
It's got the same river systems, it's in the same catchment. So the name the Riverina came from the fact that it's actually it's quite an old name. It's, like I said, it's first coined back in the 1860s. So it has brand recognition, and it's a nice name.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got a nice ring about it.
I was going to say, it is a very beautiful name. I think it would have the nicest name of all the states in Australia when we get it.
It is actually. It's got a nice sound. It is a beautiful name. But also it extends the way it describes the geographical thing that it describes. It's not just limited to New South Wales. But the other thing, Tim, is right from our first Riverina State meeting, which was in Barham, which is on the river, one of the border towns between Barham and Kundrook, we had some young Victorian men there, and they said immediately that Victoria should be in this as well. And I thought, well, I agree entirely. It's just that it doubled the size of the project, that's all. But there's pleasantly surprising is that the amount of support in Victoria for a Riverina State, as in part of Victoria as well, it's been there's a lot of support in Victoria. And for example, the Riverina State group has at the moment 750 members from Victoria.
Yeah.
A lot of those members are from the irrigation areas of Victoria, northern Victoria, but certainly pleasantly surprising the support in this state.
So just very quickly, if you can explain, why is it important to have members? Because a lot of people aren't political, they mightn't understand, like just signing up and becoming a member of your party, how much does that actually help? What does that mean?
It's an essential element of registering a party. To register to be a political party, to be a registered political party. Yes. So for federal registration, we need a minimum of 1,500 members. Now, state registrations are separate to federal registration. In New South Wales, we require at least 750 members who are enrolled in New South Wales. And to be registered in Victoria, we need at least 500 members who are enrolled in Victoria. So the membership, being a member, it's actually the most important part of registering a party by a long way. And
it's not hard to do. I mean, if you guys like this idea, very seriously consider just signing up as a member. You really don't have to do much else.
Yeah, that's right. Now, and I'll just talk a bit about membership, Tim, if that's all right.
There you go.
Now, being a member is very, very easy. And the easiest part of being a member is that there's actually no cost. Now, membership of the Riverina State group to be registered as a party, we have it. So there's 4 different styles of membership. But establishment membership, which is to establish the party, that is free. Absolutely costs nothing. So if anyone wants to join the Riverina State Party to enable the registration of that party and stand candidates in elections under the name of the Riverina State, just join the Riverina State group and it's free.
It costs you nothing. It can make a huge difference for the movement.
Yeah, it's an essential part of the movement. Now, membership is confidential. Membership has to be disclosed to the Electoral Commission, but that's the only body that it's disclosed to. So membership is confidential. There's no responsibility. Members don't actually have to do anything, but hopefully follow the Riverina State Group on various media, but certainly no responsibility, no obligation. You're not obligated to do anything either.
Yeah.
And
they may receive, sorry, I will just cover this quick. So they might receive a letter in the mail at some stage from the Electoral Commission asking them to confirm.
Yeah.
So if you're a member and you get that, fill it out and send it back.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah.
That's probably about all would be expected.
Yeah. That is right. That's the only thing that is really required, because the Victorian Electoral Commission, when we put in the party registration application, the Victorian Electoral Commission will post a letter to each one of the members on this submitted list and asking those members to confirm their membership in that party, and then those members have to return that letter. And the Electoral Commission, the Victorian Electoral Commission, will only count as members the members that actually return that letter. So,
which is why in practice you need a lot more people signed up than it's actually required.
We've actually got 750 members now. We have to get at least 500 members return those letters. So I want to get about 900 members before we actually put in the party registration application to make sure that we pass that test.
Yeah, that's good. I think, guys, I seriously encourage you, if you're watching this and you go, I just want to do something to help. It costs you nothing except for a little bit of time on the internet, maybe filling out a pretty easy letter, sending it back, and that helps David do some very powerful things politically for us.
Exactly, yeah. And just on that, Tim, now, establishment membership is free. There are other memberships if people want to take out, for example, a general membership. Now, that's $200 per annum. And then we have what's called a great membership, and that's $500 per annum, and then a grand membership, which is $1,000 per annum. And what that does, it makes puts a financial contribution into the party, because it actually does cost money. I mean, we don't get fuel in the car for free. It actually costs money. So if people are inclined towards assisting financially as well, they can take out one of those other memberships. But establishment membership is free.
Yeah. No, that's very good. And look, financial support, people sort of get upset, oh, you're grifting or something like that. At the end of the day, everything you do costs money. I know, you've done a very long trip today to come see me, and then you've got to go on tomorrow, and you're going to see the Mountain Cattlemen's Association, I believe.
Yeah.
So, and you're driving, I've seen on your social medias, you're driving around a lot of different places, promoting the idea, letting people know about it. So none of this is free. Then you're moving around doing a lot of paperwork. So, and I understand that you do it because you believe in the cause, but at the end of the day, if you run out of money,
Yes, I can assure you, Tim, and anyone else that there's not a this is not a money printing exercise at all. It's an exercise of responsibility, to be quite frank. And as Tim and I discussed before, so many people in all the local communities do a lot of voluntary work.
Yep.
They're on different football committees or club committees,
CFAs,
all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of people do a lot of work and there's no financial reward for it. And that's just how life is. And personally, I consider this in that same vein. But the reality is it does cost money. But from a member's point of view, there's certainly establishment membership is free, and that's very popular, and it serves a really constructive purpose, as in we get members of the party with no obstacle in the way.
Yes.
Money is not an obstacle.
Yeah, and I think that sort of proves the point that you're not in it for the money, because if you're in it for the money, you convince people of the idea and then make them pay for a membership. You're not doing that. Saying no, if you want to help, you can do that for free without offering work or money.
Yeah, but it
is important for people who can to contribute. If you want to improve things.
Yeah, but ultimately, Tim, we are, myself and whoever else is involved, we are actually we're going to ensure our prosperity.
Yes.
We're going to make sure that we have jobs here, and that is. That we can that we want to ensure that we can earn money.
Yes.
Money's a very, very good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a great method of exchange. It's a very, very good thing. So when we keep the water in these areas, when we keep the timber industry in these areas, we enable the creation of wealth, translated as money, which enables us to pay the rent, build a house, buy a car. We will do all those things.
Yes, no, definitely very important. But people do get sensitive about it, particularly with politics stuff. But I think people get upset with politics, and quite often they're looking at sort of major parties and things. But we won't get too much into that.
No.
The point is, I pick up from you that you're doing this because this is the only real answer to the problems we have. That is your focus. It's the same reason I do what I do. So for those of you who don't know, I run a page which is Rexit separating from city governments. So very much on the same line of what David's doing. I promote David on there and a few others. And I'm not asking for money. I'm not selling anything. I do it because I believe in it. And I'm talking to David because I believe you're doing what you do because you believe in it. So,
And just a small thing on that, Tim. I said before that I didn't arrive here today talking to Tim. There's actually a significant amount of history that's led up to this point. And one part of that history was that I was actually a member of the National Party in New South Wales. And I was there for a number of years, and besides attending different protests and so forth. But while I was within the National Party, I realised that even within the political system, we can't make a difference.
Yes.
We can't. I left the National Party because there were a number of reasons there, but probably the main reason was I realised it's just a waste of time.
So too tied to the Liberals would be my take. I don't know if that's yours.
They're too tied to the Liberals, and this is actually quite. I find this a very interesting topic. The National Party and the Liberal Party, of course, are in coalition. Now, to form government, they have to win seats in Victoria or New South Wales, but over 3/4 of those seats are in the urban areas. Now, they are normally contested in the coalition by the Liberal Party, part of that coalition. But to form government, they have to win seats in the urban areas, and that's why when you say that they're too closely tied to the Liberal Party, well, they are, because to form government, the National Party has to support Liberal Party policies. And Liberal Party policies are to take water out of the irrigation system and to shut down the native timber harvesting industry. Now, they don't say that in public, but that is in reality what it is. And that's why I concluded that politically, to try and work within the political system, that doesn't work either. Because even the National Party, to be quite frank, they're not on our side either, Tim. I don't like to say that to anyone that might upset people that vote for the National Party, but I think that's the reality.
I think at a party level, no, the party's not on our side. There's good people within the party, and that's probably true, and they're probably there for the right reasons, but they're not going to be able to achieve what it needs to be achieved.
We can't achieve these objectives, as in to keep our industries that our livelihoods depend on. We can't do it within the existing political system, as in the existing political party system.
Yes, I agree with that. So we'll move on. So boundaries. You started off, Riverina, really north of the Murray, included sections of Victoria, and that seems to be sort of growing. How at the end of the day are we going to decide what areas we're going to try and separate from Melbourne and Sydney? Yeah,
well, the first thing, Tim, and of course that's extremely important. The first thing is we do intend to include all the water infrastructure.
Yeah.
So that's the rivers and the infrastructure such as Lake Eildon, which we're in. We're right next to you right now.
Yep.
So Eildon and Dartmouth in Victoria, Hume we're in New South Wales, and in New South Wales there's a couple of other dams, Blowering and Burrinjuck. So we want to make sure we capture all the water, the rivers and the water infrastructure. Now, outside of that a little bit, but one of the other advantages of standing candidates in elections is that when we stand candidates in particular electorates, we will be able to observe the popularity of state formation just by the different voting booths, like how many votes we get in each voting booth. And that will also help define the boundaries, because outside of the immediate water infrastructure, for example, if we find that perhaps we stand a candidate in Bendigo, for example, but we find that it's not popular in Bendigo, well, we will say, well, the boundary Bendigo won't be included in that Riverina State because it's obviously not popular there. But somewhere, another town like, for example, Kyabram or Deniliquin, where I think we will find that it's very popular, well, they will certainly be in that new state. So we will use the election results, the different voting booths, to help define where those boundaries are.
Okay.
And as we mentioned before, leading up to a referendum on state formation, when we have that referendum, we won't include areas that state formation is not popular. For example, Bendigo. Well, Bendigo won't be in that referendum, because when we have the referendum, we have to make sure we win it.
Yes.
So we won't include areas, for example, Bendigo or Ballarat, where I suspect state formation won't be popular. They won't be in it. So outside the immediate water infrastructure area, the election results will also help decide where the actual boundaries of that state are.
Okay. So that's good news, because question I get a lot on my page, get a few people from Gippsland on there, and they're like, oh, Gippsland needs this too, but it seems very far from the Riverina. I mean, is that a possibility? What do you think should happen there? Similar problems?
Personally, I think Gippsland is one of the most abused areas in Victoria. At least as bad as the northern areas, the irrigation areas.
Yep.
I think there would be a lot of support in Gippsland to actually separate politically from Melbourne, simply because the industries that have been closed in Gippsland I consider it a disaster.
Yes.
The coal industry, which is a huge thing in Gippsland, that's being suppressed. Also the timber industry, as you mentioned before, Tim, that is also being suppressed. So if there's interest from the people in Gippsland, I would be very happy to include whoever wants to be a part of it, to be quite frank. Gippsland, of course, and as I think Tim and I discussed earlier, I mean, in my opinion, Gippsland is its own state in its own right.
it has
Now, to be quite frank.
has a lot of good infrastructure going for it.
Oh, Gippsland's a very, very wealthy area in its own right, but it's not a thing where forming another state is not something that we can just wake up one day and say that we're going to do.
Yeah.
It requires some determination and also some knowledge. You sort of got to have an idea of what you're on about, and that might not necessarily exist in Gippsland at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think there'll be a lot of people in Gippsland, and if they're happy to be part of a Riverina State, they're most welcome. Absolutely.
Yeah. Join the Riverina State, we'll make sure it's in our state constitution that if they want to separate at some future date, they can.
Exactly right. And at some future time, if Gippsland decides that they would be better off as a separate entity, a separate state, that's not a problem at all. And of course, that's covered by the Australian Constitution. They would only require the consent of the Parliament of the Riverina State. And that could actually be put into the Constitution that if they wanted to, they could.
Yeah, just sort of pre-approval. Yeah.
And I don't have an issue with that. And if, for example, if we had a Riverina State which included Gippsland and we were abusing the people of Gippsland, well, I'd
want them to get out. Yeah.
I'd be very supportive of the people of Gippsland to separate.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's good news. So if you're in Gippsland and you want out from under the shadow of Melbourne, join the Riverina State group. Then David knows there's some support there, and we'll hopefully have some candidates and we'll get some ideas.
I absolutely know there's support there.
Yeah, I imagine there would be. I get asked it quite a lot on my page.
Yep.
I'm tipping that there's a lot of people there that are looking for something. So I suppose we should probably start wrapping up soon, but a very interesting question for me, and I don't know if anyone else will be really interested. What form of government are we talking here? Because we see very similar forms, in all state governments in in Australia. We're proposing something a little bit different, so we don't end up with a big government overlord again. Yeah,
no, that's a very good question, Tim. Because what we cannot do, or certainly we will not recreate the same problem. Now, the problem that we have in all of Australia is that our electorates, we have representative governance. Our politicians are elected from different electorates, and those electorates are based on equal population. I think in Victoria it's within 10% of the average. Every electorate has to be the same within 10% of the average. So there's 88 electorates, the entire voting population divided by 88, that defines the average of the population in each electorate, and then there's a 10% leeway either side. But the problem, now that might sound okay, but what has happened in Victoria and New South Wales and South Australia is that because most of the population growth is in the urban areas, and the number of electorates is limited to 88, the urban electorates get smaller in area, and the electorates around the fringe of that urban area get smaller as the population increases in that area.
Yeah.
But because the population of each electorate increases, the only way to get the electorates in the country areas to keep up with that population growth is to make those country electorates bigger. And we've seen in
geographically larger.
Yeah, geographically bigger, yeah. And we've seen, for example, the electorate of Mallee, the federal electorate of Mallee, and every time there's a redistribution in New South Wales or Victoria, the country electorates get bigger in area to capture the more people, and the electorates in the fringe areas, the areas around the cities get smaller. So we have to make sure we don't recreate that same problem where, for example, if we form a Riverina State, and just for example, Albury-Wodonga is part of that Riverina State, and then Albury-Wodonga turns into the Melbourne of the Riverina, or the Sydney of the Riverina, and we end up with just another huge urban population dominating the rest of the state.
Yeah.
So we're proposing that we have a representative at Parliament, of course, but electorates based on population but limited by area. We will make sure we won't have this situation where electorates can continue to get bigger with no limit to how big they can get.
Okay.
So we're advocating that no electorates, they're based on a member of Parliament for every 10,000 voters, but no bigger than 10% of the area of the state. So one electorate cannot get bigger.
So it can sort of got a boundary of its
there's
own.
a limit on how big.
Maximum, absolutely, yeah.
A limit on how big it can get.
Yeah.
So it can only get no bigger than 10% of the area of the state. And you'll find immediately, I know Mallee is federal electorate, but just for example, Mallee would immediately,
I think we've lost a light.
Mallee would immediately become smaller again.
Yeah.
So that's at one end of the scale. At the other end of the scale, in any 10% of the area of the state, there's no more than 10 electorates and no more than 10 politicians.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to make sure that we, even if a bigger, a more populated area develops, it doesn't develop into a situation where we have at the moment, where over 3/4 of the population, politicians,
yeah.
come from about 2 or 3% of the area of the state.
Yeah.
So we're advocating that, and that will immediately stop the problem that we've got now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some people might say, gee, that's not democratic, you can't do that. But in actual fact, you can, and there's a precedent in Australian politics for area limits on electorates. It's not an exact precedent, but the Australian Senate consists of 12 senators from each state. Each state has 12 senators, regardless of population. So Tasmania, I think Tasmania's got, I think it's 1.5 million voters, or roundabouts, I'm not quite sure of the number, but there's 12 senators. Victoria, with I think 4.5 million voters, 12 senators.
Yeah.
So there's already precedent for a representation not based entirely on exact population figures.
Yeah. So just on the senators, real quick, that would our new state would likely then also have 12 senators. So that would also give us some federal balancing, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's not necessary.
No, not quite, Tim, because when Australia's federated, Section 120 is the relevant section there.
Yeah.
Section 120 gives the federal government the authority to admit new states, but also to decide any terms or conditions that they think should be on that state.
Okay, yeah.
Which, and specifically in Section 120, they specifically mention representation in the Senate. So, but I don't know.
We'd have to negotiate very hard.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Like, for example, a Riverina State federally would probably get, say, for example, instead of 12 senators, 2.
Yeah.
Like the Northern Territory, for example, has, I think, 2 senators.
Yeah.
We would start out with probably 2 senators as well.
Okay.
So, but of course, once we reach the population of Tasmania, which we would,
Yeah.
very quickly, I would demand 12 senators.
Yes.
Once we reach that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and that makes sense. And we're probably not getting that representation really at the moment anyway at a federal level.
Oh, we're not.
Yeah.
No,
So it's still an improvement.
Oh, it's a huge improvement.
Yes.
Yeah, like, and just for example on that, like say for example, an Albury-Wodonga was in a Riverina State. Now, at the moment, and I'll just refer to New South Wales, but Albury has 1.2% of the representation in the New South Wales Parliament, because New South Wales has 93 members of Parliament, 93 electorates. Albury is 1 electorate, and that's 1.2% of the representation in the New South Wales Parliament.
Yeah.
Now, under a Riverina State, the proposed Riverina State with the area limits on electorates, now even though there's limits on the area of, say, Albury would automatically achieve 30% of the representation in that new state.
Yeah.
And I'm excluding Victoria at this stage because I've just only calculated this on New South Wales.
Yeah.
So it would achieve 30% of the representation in that parliament, but it will not get any more.
Okay.
And when I say Albury, and I haven't done my maths very well there, it's Albury and Wagga, sorry. So you're talking about the most populated area of the state, of that proposed state, excluding Victoria at this stage.
Mm-hmm.
So it has 1.2 for Albury and 1.2 for Wagga. So 2.4% of the representation of the state. It would automatically go to 30% of the representation, but no more.
Yeah. Okay.
It will not develop into 75% or anywhere near 75% of the representation of that state. So the political representation of the state will be much more evenly dispersed throughout that state.
Yes.
And keep the political power more evenly dispersed throughout that state.
Okay.
We're also advocating, Tim, a few things, because we can't just, I don't think we can say we need another state and then have not propose any model for that state. Now,
Yeah.
we're advocating a few other things, and I think these will be very popular, that the people in the state elect the Premier. At the moment, of course, the Parliament elects the Premier. It might appear that the people elect the Premier.
So you sort of vote for the party elects the
And
Premier.
the parliamentarians elect the Premier, and then if the polling turns around and he's no good, well, they just turf him out and then put in a new Premier.
So,
But personally, I don't like that, and I don't think many people do, because we elect members of Parliament under the assumption or the understanding that he or she will be the Premier, and then all of a sudden they turf him out and change it.
Mhm.
No, that doesn't happen. We're advocating that we actually elect the Premier as well.
Okay.
So, and there's a little bit of detail to that, which I won't go into. It's a little bit complicated, a bit more complicated than the time that we're at.
Yeah.
But the other thing is term limits on politicians, Tim. We're actually advocating that politicians can only be members of Parliament for a maximum of 8 years.
Yeah. Okay. So 2 terms.
2 terms, for example. And then after that, thank you very much for your service, but you must stand aside and allow another candidate to be elected.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is there's a few reasons for that, but I think politicians, once they've been in there for 8 years, they've either achieved what they want to achieve or they've failed.
Yeah.
And whether they've achieved it or failed, they've basically done what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And we would be better served if they stand aside and then we have another member of Parliament is elected. And the other thing, Tim, is unfortunately I suspect, and I think we probably all agree, there's a far too much deal doing and perhaps corruption in politics.
Might call it that, yep.
Yes, I think some might call it that. And the longer a parliamentarian or a member of Parliament is in Parliament, the more subject they are to lobbyists, back scratching, which is you look after me, I look after you. And all of a sudden, I think we get governance that's actually not in the interests of the people that elect those members of Parliament. So, and generally I would call that corruption, and I think it becomes increasingly corrupt. So I think we are advocating term limits on politicians. You're only there for so long, stand aside after that time, and then we have another member of Parliament come forward. And I think the people will be better served with that system.
Yes, I'd agree with that. You're not going to end corruption. Where there's politics, there will be corruption.
There will be.
But you can certainly do things to help stifle corruption.
That's right.
So, and I think, term limits is a good idea. So, if we elect the Premier then, would that make sort of 3, like a separation of powers into 3 as opposed, because at the moment, most states are 2, but all states in Australia are sort of 2.
We're actually advocating that the executive, the Premier, is actually separate from the Parliament.
Yeah.
It is a more presidential style of governance, which we are recommending. But it really has to be that way. If the people elect the Premier, that means that the Parliament hasn't elected the Premier. So it's taken the power, that authority or that power away from the Parliament, and we have to have a clean break.
Mm-hmm.
We can't elect the Premier, which I think most people would like to do.
Yep.
But we can't elect the Premier and then put the Premier back in with the Parliament, and then the Parliament kick the Premier out again.
Or just stifle everything they try to do. Yeah.
So we're advocating a separate legislature, which is the Parliament, a separate executive, which is the Premier, and the Premier is the Governor of the state, elected by us, separate from the Parliament, and then of course the other arm of government, of course, is the judiciary. So, and that is already separate as it is. So that will remain separate, but we do want to keep the Premier, the executive, separate from the legislature as well. So what we're advocating is a form of governance that I think if it's examined, Tim, it will be found that it is more representative of the will of the people. simply because the members of parliament are elected by the people. Also, the premier is elected by the people. And as I mentioned, for example, when there's spills or re-elections of the premier, there is some dealing done between the premier or the candidates for election for the premier and the members of parliament. And if observers of politics will have seen that, and for example, the supporters of a member of the successful candidate, the supporters of the candidate that is elected as premier or prime minister in the example of the federal parliament, a lot of those supporters end up in ministries.
Strange, that, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, it is strange in a way if you think that the world's honest. Yes, it is. But it's I consider that going into the area of corruption.
Yeah.
Where if you vote for me to be premier or prime minister, and then that candidate is elected, and then the supporters of that premier or prime minister are awarded ministries, which is worth another $100,000 to $200,000 per annum, and an automatic member of the cabinet and a lot of authority, I don't think that the election of the premier should depend on how many deals are done leading up to that election. So,
because then we're getting ministers that they're not getting that role because of their good qualifications in whatever it is, law enforcement or something. They're not getting because of their great qualifications and track record. They're getting it because they voted for, that's a pretty big issue.
It is, Tim, and look, we probably don't want to look at that, but it's a fact. That is why, and it's a big issue, but that's why a lot of ministers are appointed, because they supported the candidate that was elected as the premier or the prime minister. And that's why. And if you look at various ministers, you will find that most ministers have no professional qualifications or personal experience to qualify them for those ministries. They're simply appointed from the parliament, and I don't think, on the surface, that doesn't sound very efficient or effective to me.
No, it's. I'm going to agree with you on that one as well. That's pretty obvious, isn't it? Like, you want people to know what they're doing.
Well, the qualifications aren't there. Not a professional qualification and not personal experience. It's not there. But these people are ministers, and unfortunately, I just as an observer of politics, I've concluded that the reason they're ministers is because they've supported the winning candidate. For the premiership.
For the premiership or for leadership of the party.
Yeah.
All right. Look, I think we should wrap up. Was there anything else you wanted to add in real quickly?
No, Tim, I think we've actually spoken a fair bit longer than what we originally intended.
Yeah.
And I think it's all been covered. But the only thing I can just repeat is that state formation, separate from Melbourne, separate from Sydney, it is the only answer.
It really, I'm not aware of any other answer. If anyone else has got another bright idea, let me know. I like bright ideas, but I don't see another answer. So I will wrap up because I get to be a bit of an independent party here. I think if you like this idea and you want to do nearly nothing, but you want to do something, become a member.
And there's a membership form on the website. The website is the Riverina State, all one word, theriverinaState.com.au, and there's a membership page there where members can just fill in their details, their name, their date of birth, their full name, their address, their date of birth, and just email it through. I will telephone that member and have a talk just to introduce myself to each other, and that's actually all that's required.
Okay, and maybe share content around on social media and things like that, let your friends know, and spread the word about the Riverina State. Rexit is what I generally call it, but Rexit is a broad term, so when we're talking about Queensland, Northern Queensland, that's part of the Rexit movement, but very separate from the Riverina State movement. But yeah, that's just to separate those, but yeah, thank you, David. It's been a pleasure having you.
My pleasure, Tim. And as you know, Tim, I find this a very interesting topic.
Yes, I love it.
It's a very interesting topic. Yeah. And the bottom line is, it's interesting, but it has a real effect on us. It really does. And you know, I go through a lot of the towns in the country areas of New South Wales and northern Victoria, and a lot of those towns are in decline.
Yes.
So there are real consequences to governance. You can have good governance, you can have bad governance, and at the moment we are far from good.
Mm.
So not only is this, I think, very interesting, but there are real consequences and, to be quite frank, real benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And we will accomplish those.
Well, I'm passionate about it because I've got 2 young children, and I want them to be able to stay in at least a rural community. I don't want them to have to live in the city. One of them probably will want to, but I don't want them to have to.
And we see that so often, Tim, where our children leave school and then there's no jobs in the local area and they go elsewhere. So we want to keep ourselves in this area, but we want to keep our children in this area. If they want to stay here, there's a job here for them.
Yeah.
But to have a job here for them, you've got to have the wealth creation. Jobs just don't appear out of nowhere on a bit of paper. We have to create something. And as we said earlier on, we create primary wealth, as in the wool, the cotton, the beef, the lands, all that sort of stuff. Now it's manufacturing in a way, but it's primary manufacturing. We do a lot of that, and we'll continue to do that, and keep the jobs here, and keep our kids here, and keep ourselves here.
So do something for your kids. Join the Riverina State group, and help David spread the word and get this happening. If you can help financially, I would encourage people to do so, but you know, you guys have got to make your own decisions, but you know, these things cost money.
No, thanks very much, Tim, for your time.
Thank you, David.
Great.